Welcome to myDesigner 6 for myServer 6. This tutorial is going to go over working with scenes and overlays. For this video, I am going to work with our Moonlight user interface. It is the default UI for myServer 6. If you look in the tree on the left, you will see the many HTML web files associated with this project. Scenes which are marked with a red icon and overlays, which are marked with a blue, are created in the same way. The difference between the two is that scenes have a solid background and are the foundation of the page. Overlays are transparent and are applied to scenes like a layered cake. Each is applied on top of each other. The scene and all its overlays becomes the page that is visible in the browser. First thing I am going to do is open the index scene. When I open it, you will notice right away that you have a defined workspace designated by a dotted line border. The size of the area that you work in was defined in the properties when the project was created and is based on the device that you selected. You are free to change the size at any time by selecting the main project properties icon at the top of the page. Remember though that you need to be working in a size that is device appropriate. When working in this space, you are free to move components around and even over the borders, keeping in mind that only what is in the designated space will appear on your device. Let's take a look at the icons associated with a scene and overlay. These can be found just above the scene and below the project name and file name that is open. The first icon in this row is again the exit, like above, where you exit the app. The second icon is the Save button that saves the page when you make changes. It is important to click the Save button often as you work, just in case you accidentally close the app without saving. This actually happens often when you start working in the app. Next to the Save icon is another Save icon with arrows going around it in a circular motion. This icon does that same thing as the Save icon, although it refreshes the page at the same time. This way you can see all the changes applied to the page. Sometimes just saving the file will not necessarily show all the changes you've made. This is why the Save Refresh Page icon was created. The next icon is the Save As icon and allows you to copy and save the current file with a new name. To the right of this one, you will see a black icon with tools in it. This is the properties icon for the scene or overlay. When you click this icon, you will get a dialog box where you can set more features. Notice at the top you have the exit icon again and a Save button. You should always click the Save button when you are done setting the properties of a scene. As you can see in the first tab, you have the option of overwriting the background color or image that you set when you created the project. This allows you to get creative and do something different for each individual scene if you like. Now that I have added a new photo as a background, I am going to dim it down a bit by applying a background overlay. I think this looks good. The next tab is the Overlays tab. This is where you add your overlays to a scene. As an example, you can see that there is an overlay called Navigator. This overlay is applied to almost all pages in the project. Here you can see it as the first entry in the list. To add an overlay, click the first icon with the plus sign. You will get a blank entry added to the bottom. Click the More icon to select your overlay. Wait a couple seconds for it to appear. In the next column, you will get a checkbox option called Visible on Load. This is asking you whether your overlay will be visible on the scene when you go to it, as opposed to one that is hidden from view and is accessible via a button touch. In the instance of the Navigator, it is always visible, so the checkbox is checked Yes. It will always be visible. The next two columns are where you can set conditions for something to appear as well as the value required. This is an advanced feature that can be implemented when you have multiple overlays, but only want certain ones to be visible at one time. For example, consider the lighting page. Our house has 3 floors, but we only want to see one floor at a time. So we define server variables representing the active floor name. In this case, you can see the lighting, visible floor, client name server variable. We use that server variable for the 3 floors, and then set the value variable to the floor name. When I launch this project and navigate to lighting, you can see the 3 floors, and as you click each one, you only get the corresponding floor. If this looks complicated to you, do not worry. This type of server variable is common and you get used to it quickly. Also remember that our template scenes come set up and programmed, so in many cases you will just need to edit the scenes. Back to the Overlay tab. Next to the Add an Overlay icon you will find a red X. This allows you to delete an overlay from the list. Just click in the number field and delete. Next to the delete icon are 2 arrow icons, which are used to order your overlays. You can arrange overlays by highlighting the overlay that you want to move and then clicking on the green up or down arrow buttons. You can have an unlimited number of overlays, but it is important to remember that overlays stack on top of each other. The stacking order is defined by the overlay number in the table. So, the bottom-most overlay is number 1, and each subsequent overlay will be on top of the previous. The last tab is where you can put in commands that get executed when the page loads. You can specify either a client command, server command, or both. Client commands are executed locally on the tablet or handheld and do not require communication with the server. Server commands are sent directly to myServer for processing. The syntax for both of these commands will be covered in their own video. Let's go back to the icons at the top. Next to the Properties icon is the Copy icon. Select any object on a scene and click Copy when you want to copy something. Then click the Paste icon to the right of it. You will use these icons a lot while designing your scenes. When you paste the object, it will be offset by 10 pixels. This is to help minimize accidentally copying and pasting the same object on top of each other. After you paste the object, you can hold down the Shift key and use the arrow keys to move the object 10 pixels at a time. If you don't hold down the Shift key, it will only move 1 pixel at a time. Another way to copy and paste is to do a select all using the Control keys on your keyboard. Control-A will select all the objects on the page. You can copy them and paste. Or Control-click to select individual objects. Right-click on any object to see a context menu showing the available keyboard shortcuts. Just a note that there is no undo option in myDesigner. The next icon, which is the large X, is used to delete objects. Be careful that you do not hit the X when you are really looking to paste. That can happen sometimes, and if it does, you can always exit the file without saving it. When you reopen the file, the objects should still be there. The next 3 icons are the zoom out and zoom in, with the return to original size in the center. Sometimes the zoom out can be useful to see if you have any objects far off from your workspace. The final 2 icons are for viewing and closing developer tools. Turning on developer tools is the equivalent of doing inspect in Chrome. This allows you to see in great detail what the browser is doing. Normally you will never have to go into this mode. We use this feature when developing web components. The last item, labeled client name, displays the unique identifier that the designer uses when communicating with the server. This is purely for informational purposes, and you do not need to do anything with it. Now I am going to quickly open an overlay. As you can see, the background is bright blue, reminding you that you are working with a transparency. If I click on the properties of this overlay, you will see that there is no option to set an image or color for the background, as well as no command options. You do though have the option of adding another overlay on top of this one. There are good reasons to do this. If you look, I have an overlay applied to this navigator. It is our logo. Everywhere you see the navigator, you will also see this logo. The reason it is a separate overlay is that sometimes you may want to apply the overlay on a scene that does not have the navigator. If you have a separate overlay that you can apply to scenes that may be different, the logo will always be in the exact same location as well as the exact same size. In general, overlays are a way to assure continuity throughout the user interface. Another good example of applying an overlay to an overlay is on a button with a pop-up, such as with the volume. By applying the pop-up on the overlay, you do not need to apply it to every page throughout the UI. It only needs to be added in this one location. This makes it more efficient to edit and maintain. That is it for this video. Next, we will start to dive into the general web components.